and the teachings of the Buddha are often compared to a vehicle or a yana, because they take us on a journey from darkness into light, from the known to the unknown, from falsity to truth. The particular vehicle that all of us have climbed aboard has traditionally been called the Hinayana, or the small vehicle. Originally used in a somewhat negative way, pejorative sense by members of the Mahayana school. But I think it's not such a bad term after all, if we understand the small vehicle as being somewhat similar to a Mercedes sports car. It's smaller than a lumbering truck, but if we're going on a long journey, then I know which vehicle I prefer to sit in. So the small vehicle is one which it's small not because there are any restrictions on who may study and practice the teachings. Quite the opposite. The Buddha said quite explicitly that unlike other teachers, he doesn't keep anything back. This may seem to contradict his other famous saying, where he picked up some leaves from the forest floor and said that the things that the Buddha had realized and understood could be compared with all the leaves on the forest floor, but that which he had taught his disciples was similar to the number of leaves in his hand. But the things that he didn't teach his disciples were not esoteric, profound teachings that he didn't think they were ready for. Rather, the Buddha was not interested in creating a philosophical system. He was interested in finding a way out of jail, of going on this journey. And so he was concerned to select only those truths that would be of benefit in the study and practice of Dhamma and the liberation from dukkha, suffering and defilement. So he doesn't have the closed fist, as he said, of other teachers. Everything that was necessary for an unenlightened being to realize enlightenment, he taught, and he taught well. It was the Sawakata Dhamma. No one could have expressed as well as he did, as clearly as he did. When we come across the teachings, Ajahn Chah's simile was, it's as if we wander into a beautiful orchard where all these trees are all in fruit, and all we have to do is just pluck the fruits from the trees. But the Buddha was the person who planted the orchard, found the trees and planted the orchard, and we owe it to him that things are practice, although it often seems very difficult for us, In fact, it's very clear cut what we have to do. There's not that much room for doubt, although we do try to doubt wherever we can. And the Buddha, before he entered Parinibbana, before he left the world, made it quite clear that as long as there were any gaps in the teaching, anything that wasn't completely explained, then he would not enter Parinibbana. That he did agree to enter Parinibbana because he had passed on everything, every teaching that needed to be passed on. And so we are the inheritors of a perfect teaching, one in which there is no lack, there is no excess. This is the Pawdi teaching, the middle way teaching. Even though in this so-called small vehicle following the Buddha's Parinibbana, monks having to protect the teachings against misrepresentations and to distinguish it from other religions, traditions, and to develop a whole Abhidhamma, a whole system of psychology and philosophy, to the extent that we may feel it's rather as if they decided after all to analyze the arrow in the man's heart and exactly what wood it's made from and how far it's flown through the air and so on and so forth. This is something that occurred due to the causes, conditions that developed in India following the Buddha's Parinibbana. But I think it's very important that we keep coming back to the core teachings. And they're very bold teachings, very direct. And there's this feeling of it's just, as you see, like a spaceship, or one of the American spaceships. You feel every single aspect of that spaceship, every single element within it is there for a purpose, and it's there with. This is the same with the Buddha's teachings, and we overlook or disregard or minimize the importance of any aspect of those teachings at our peril, because they're there for a purpose. One of the characteristics of the Theravada or the Hinayana approach, as we understand that the Buddha himself taught this way. That is the use of predominantly negative language in describing the path and particularly the goal. So the Buddha pointed to the roots of our suffering in these defilements of greed, hatred and delusion. These are the root defilements, and spoke about their opposites as being absence of greed, greedlessness, absence of hate, absence of delusion, alobha, adosa, amoha. And this is just one of a number of examples where there's it seems at least no positive goal being established. But this is in some part due to our lack of facility with the Pali language, in that seems in Pali a number of words, although expressed in this form with the a before the word, negating the negative quality, in fact expresses far more than that. Perhaps an example in the English language, one or two that came up in my mind while we were chanting. Impeccable, for instance. This means not peccable, but there are in the when we hear that word, we don't. I don't at least hear that as a negation. To say someone is impeccable, there's a positive sense to that word. Similarly with the word flawless, we hear that word and we don't just consider it in terms of an absence of flaws. There's something else. There's a positive quality on top of that. Or so we say something is priceless, a priceless jewel. Or we say something is unimaginably beautiful, indescribably profound. We use these negative terms in English, although perhaps we don't really pick up on it so much. So what are our goals in practice? What is our goal? Well, we talk about nibbana, but that's so far away, it seems. So what does nibbana mean? And the Buddha often would define it simply as alobha, adosa, amoha, the absence of lobha, absence of dosa, absence of moha. That's what we're practicing for. And if we are honest with ourselves, we may see that we're not always that committed to that goal. We're committed to enlightenment and to nibbana, but are we always committed to the complete absence of desire, or of lobha, at least? This is ignorant desire. Obviously sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. But this way of looking at practice, or the goal of practice, I think is a very useful one. To be measuring our practice, and I think it is something that we should be doing, using these criteria of greed, hatred and delusion, lobha, dosa and moha. And Ajahn Chah recommended this. He said, don't get into all that sotapanna, sakitagami, anagami, arahant stuff. He said that's a real way to conceit, delusion. It's a trap that you can fall into. He's not refuting these categories, of course not. He's saying, looking at your practice, look rather by asking yourself, is there still lobha in my mind? Is there still dosa in my mind? Is there delusion in my mind? So this is a different way of looking at, have I attained this? Have I realized that? But we're taking these qualities, these defilements, and looking very closely to see whether they are still manifesting within us. So, for instance, we may be able to develop quite good concentration on occasions, but at the same time, still a lot of desire coming up, a lot of anger or aversion, a lot of confusion or doubt at other times. This is the way to keep coming back and really seeing how well balanced the practice is and where exactly it's going. And we begin to understand these root defilements more clearly, and to a more and more skillful means of dealing with them and seeing the connection between them. And the other day I was talking with a monk and was saying, as someone pointed out, how many monks or meditators who start off with very strong anger, a lot of dosa in their minds, and then they work very hard on the dosa and they get on top of it, and then suddenly they're assailed by very strong sexual desires. And this is quite a common phenomena, and the reason being that the dosa is derived from the lobha, and the lobha, the desire, is manifesting as dosa when it's frustrated. But once that dosa starts to fall away, then it reverts to this very strong form of sexual desire. So begin to see the connections between them as well. Now, the letting go of defilements on any level, a level in our behavior, on the level of hindrances, samadhi, or the deeper level of the proclivities, the level of wisdom. There always has to be this recognition, clear seeing of what in Thai we call the thot, or the disadvantage, or the suffering inherent in them, and to see the advantage, the benefit, we call the kun, of being free of them. This is fundamental to all kinds of skillful analysis and investigation, looking to see the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages, the benefits and the cost of any particular action, behavior, addiction, attachment, whatever. The Buddha said that our usual or instinctive analysis is one in which we tend to far overstate the benefits and to understate the cost of the things that we're attached to. Or we create some kind of framework in which the cost is diminished. So in the quest for sensual pleasures, the Buddha said that there is little benefit, little happiness to be had from them, and much suffering. But that's not the way that most people experience it or believe it to be so. So it requires going against the grain and being willing to look at the whole question of what you actually get from sensual pleasures. It's not taking kind of Puritan stance saying this is wrong, this is bad, this is evil, but saying look closely at your experience of sensual pleasure, what exactly you get out of it, what benefits you receive, and what the cost of it is to the quality of your life, to the quality of your behavior. For instance, we may notice that the first pang of desire is like being stabbed by a knife or a needle, and that at that moment of desire, it's I would say, objectively looking at it, it's not a pleasant feeling. And then the restlessness of desire, the sense of lack. This is what desire is, isn't there? This is perceived sense of lack. You need that object to take away that sense of lack. So there's an inherent sense of insufficiency, of lack, and in the process of searching for the object of desire. And while we're trying to fulfill a particular desire, then our attitude to other people changes. They become competitors. Perhaps if they are already enjoying the thing that we would like to get our hands on, then we maybe feel jealous of them. We fear. We don't have any guarantee that we're going to get what we want. So there is fear. There is tension in the mind. And the effort to procure the object of desire is a stressful one to one extent, to one level or another. And if we want that object very much, and perhaps the only way to get it is to hurt other people, take advantage of other people, break the law, break one's precepts, then if the desire is very strong, then the sense of shame and fear of consequences momentarily disappears, and we are often willing to create bad karma. And then, of course, there are the times when we're unsuccessful and we don't attain the object of our desire. And there's a feeling of disappointment, sadness, being let down, grief, depression. But suppose that we do obtain the object of desire. Notice how the pleasure that we feel is to a great extent merely the release, the escape from all the tension of searching for it, the effort to acquire it, a sense of relaxation or cessation. So in a way, what's really most pleasurable is the cessation of tanha, as opposed to any inherent quality in the object itself. There may be something pleasant in the object, but the intensity of the pleasure is conditioned by other things. We attain the object of our desire, and if it's something that's durable, it's not food or something, before very long, the intensity of pleasure starts to recede somewhat, because it's not physically possible, it's not mentally possible, we just can't, our organisms can't sustain intense pleasure for very long. That's the nature of a human being. We can't be on a peak all the time. That's why we have peak experiences. And then as the intensity of the pleasure, the happiness starts to fade a little, then there is anxiety and perhaps the attention again and desire to find some way of preventing it from receding, or some way of stimulating it some more, or trying to make it even more intense. Or perhaps we've acquired some object, and now we have the problem of looking after it, fear of someone stealing it, taking it away from us. And always in the back of our mind is knowledge that sooner or later we will have to be separated from it. So when we consider pleasures, happiness in the sensual world, we tend to abstract just that sort of the moment of the greatest pleasure from that whole process, beginning with the first pang of desire, I want that, through the process of search, acquiring, getting used to, or even getting bored with, tension of looking after, eventual separation. It's only when we look at the whole process like that that we can really understand what the Buddha is saying when he says a lot of suffering and little pleasure. Because if you just think of the piti and joy and the high that you get from essential pleasure at the very moment of enjoyment, then it doesn't seem correct. But you have to look at the whole process and the whole effect it has on your life and your relations with others, the strengthening of the unwholesome dhammas that takes place at that time. So lopa and ignorant desire is based on this idea that we lack something, or that through accumulation, through acquiring something, we become more, we become better, we become stronger, more secure, happier. This is a basic wrong view, wrong understanding that underlies this compulsive desire to accumulate and to eat experience. Why is it that the eyes want to go towards the beautiful object, the ear towards the pleasant sound, the nose towards the pleasant odor, the tongue towards the pleasant taste, the body towards the pleasant tangible object, and so on? It's because we feel we get something from that. We fundamentally change for the better through it. And this is surely the unspoken assumption behind it. That we become stronger, we become more real, we become more secure. So the Buddha's asking us to stop and look and so noticing the ugliness of greed. Perhaps we don't see it so much in ourselves, but if you've seen other people, sometimes you just catch that look of naked greed, you say, on somebody's face, and just an instinctive sense of that's disgusting. Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen someone just in an unguarded moment with a look of pure lust in their eyes? Is that beautiful? There's something about it which is revolting. Seeing the pain and the suffering in this world that is caused by lobha, by greed. We know that so much unnecessary suffering caused in the world through greed, the unequal distribution of wealth, people who are all over the world who are starving unnecessarily, not because there's not enough food, but the people who have are unwilling to share with the people who have not, and the people who have want even more. And so everywhere we look, we see these awful things going on, whether it's child labor, child prostitution, drugs trade, all these terrible things that are going on in the society. And what's the root cause of them? It's this lobha and greed in the human mind. So there used to be a catchphrase many years ago: if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. So as Buddhist monks or as meditators, then we're seeking to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And although we're not social workers as such, if we accept this analysis of social evils as being the expression of greed, hatred, and delusion in the human heart, we see that the way of fundamentally dealing with the problem is the eradication of greed, hatred, and delusion, and sharing one's knowledge of how to eradicate greed, hatred, and delusion with others. This is not just dealing with the symptoms of the human malaise, but it's dealing with the causes. So this practice, even if we're very intent on our own spiritual development, this has it's not too grand to say this has cosmic significance. There are human beings devoting themselves to eradication, greed, hatred, and delusion, and taking these greedlessness, alobha, the lack of hatred, the lack of delusion, the words metta, compassion, wisdom, as one's goals in life, something to aspire towards, to be completely free from all sensual desires. And we see great masters who've reached that level, and to see how inspiring it is. As someone is completely beyond the pull of those worldly energies. Someone who would not hurt another living being, even to save his own life. Someone who has no desire to acquire, to accumulate, to take. Ajahn Jayasaro again once at one point talking about the mind that's been trained. You say, you see something and someone says, "Is that beautiful?" You say, "Yes." You say, "Do you want it?" "No." And that's where you drive the wedge. You know, these days there is this automatic there's this very deep connection. It's beautiful, therefore I want it. It's beautiful, therefore I move towards it, I incline towards it. But as the mind's been trained, then there's merely a recognition of something as attractive or as beautiful, but the jump towards it, the impulse to acquire it, to eat it, to make it mine, is gone. So we're going beyond this basic. Ajahn Sucitto has this wonderful word, orificity. Going beyond the orificity of the unenlightened human being, where one's whole mental life is just bound up with one orifice or another. I think that's worth doing. I mean, it's just pretty humiliating just being an orifice man. I mean, just I mean, surely there's more to human life than orifices. So we're living in the world of the pleasant and the unpleasant, and it's this equanimity I was talking about before. And sometimes the beauty is so compelling. Remember Ajahn Sumedho talking about climbing the mountain in Switzerland, just referring to the achingly beautiful mountains. Yeah, that feeling when you see something that's so beautiful, it aches. You know, it's even there's a sense where the beauty, because it comes so strong, it's unpleasant. Just notice these kinds of experiences, and then to see that there's nothing that you can grasp onto. It's not just that you shouldn't grasp. This isn't teaching don't grasp at anything. You know, you can't anyway. You know. Sometimes we see things and there's just there's a desire to grasp. You see a mountain, you know you can't, but you want to. Or you want to fix something in time. There you see like coachloads of tourists jumping off a bus and setting up their tripods, and me in front of the Colosseum, me in front of the Taj Mahal, and somehow capture things in time if they can't take the Colosseum or the Taj Mahal home with them. Or perhaps maybe there are plastic replicas, but it's not the same. So through a meditation practice, a very practical way of seeing that you don't actually need anything. Your body needs the four requisites, but your mind doesn't need to accumulate anything. It doesn't need to add anything on. It doesn't need to beautify or embellish. Just this plain mind, the sense of knowing, knows right, knows wrong, knows the beautiful, knows the unbeautiful. The sense what is known is changing all the time. But this basic sense of knowing, there's something stable there. The one who knows, begin with it knows falsely, but we educate the one who knows, we educate the sense of knowing. And then it gradually becomes to know things more and more clearly, accurately, authentically. And in that clear seeing and clear understanding, there is this deep well of happiness. Buddha says in the Dhammapada, seeing the arising and passing away of the five khandhas is a blissful experience. So only the happy mind is strong enough and has the ability to penetrate into the truth of things, and the more willing that you are to let go of the coarser kinds of sensual desires, coarser kinds of happiness, then the more the mind is freed up to experience the more subtle kinds of happiness. As someone who doesn't meditate, or someone who's has no interest in spiritual life, then they probably feel sorry for people like us, or people who are practicing in this way, because it doesn't seem like it seems like we're giving up all these enjoyments and don't see that we're getting anything in return. But this is like young kids who are playing with their dolls, with their Barbies and their action men. You just see grown-ups don't enjoy playing with dolls, and all the kids must think being an adult must be really boring. You don't have a doll, you don't have a teddy bear, you don't play sandcastles and all the best things in life you give up when you're an adult. So it really wants to be Peter Pan. But I think there are a few adults, apart from an occasional moment of nostalgia, who really would like to go back to finding their happiness in teddy bears and Barbie dolls. So the part of the development of human being is development, gradual maturation in one's understanding of happiness, and the increasingly subtle forms of happiness are perhaps invisible to others, but they're something that really sustain the human heart. And if one's in that kind of no man's land, where one's having to give up some of the coarser pleasures, but there's not yet any real access to the higher, more subtle pleasures and enjoyments, happiness, then one needs to be very patient and to dwell in the mind of faith and really believe the Buddha. And if there is, you look at any teaching of the Buddha that you have been able to prove to any degree, you will surely feel, at least I feel, that not a single fault, discrepancy there, absolutely accurate in every case. So the Buddha says that the practice of Dhamma brings happiness to the human heart. Then we believe the Buddha and put his teachings into practice and put it to the test. The faith in Buddhism is not a faith that just sort of leaves you stranded. You have to believe or you don't believe. But it's a belief in your own capacity, belief in your own potential, and something that you can put to the test. So the daily practice, it goes up and goes down, doesn't it? And to end the talk this evening, I'm just reminded of kind of an image that's always a memory that I felt at the moment that I saw this, that this had some kind of important significance and something which has indeed stayed with me over more than 20 years. I was traveling in a bus through huge desert, and it took this bus 15-20 hours to cross this desert, and almost nothing to be seen on either side through the windows, just sand and rock. And I was at a pretty low ebb in my life, and I'd been in India and practicing meditation, and at least to a certain extent, and felt that I was really getting somewhere. And then I'd left India, so I didn't have any money left, and had many kinds of adventures, and but really feeling that I'd rather lost it. In fact, I hadn't only just lost it, I'd also lost my passport as well, so I was in quite a fix, and someone put me on this bus, and I was traveling through this desert, and I looked out the windows, and it's just sand and rock. And I can remember thinking, that's me, sand and rock, as far as the eye can see. And every time I look out, there's this thought can just keep coming up, that's me, sand and rock. And then with that sort of happy thought in my mind, I fell asleep. And during the night, quite an unusual thing happened. There was a rainstorm in the desert, and I came round, and I feel it was sort of cooler. And I looked out, and I couldn't believe my eyes, because all through the desert and on the rocky outcrops, there were these beautiful flowers, little yellow and mauve, turquoise flowers, rather like those flowers you see on the way up to Pujamkam. And it was just a miracle. I mean, where did they come from? I mean, yesterday it was just sand and rock. Now this is beautiful beautiful flowers everywhere. Not big flowers, just tiny little flowers. But they just sprung up in the middle of hours. And so I thought, oh, maybe I've got all these little flowers in my heart and my mind. All they need is just a little bit of rain on them. And so I was, just that thought, there's a big smile broke out on my face, and I thought, yeah, I can do it. And that's just the memory of looking out that bus window and seeing those flowers so unexpectedly and so beautifully, all those years ago, has always stayed with me, and through the sort of the downs of my practice, that memory stayed with me, that it's not a sure thing. Even the desert can sprout flowers, and even when your mind's feeling really dry and lifeless and dull, and if you just keep at it, and just sprinkle the water of Dhamma, of mindfulness, clear comprehension, sincere effort, then you can create beauty in the mind. There's always a way forward. There's a kind of hope that the Buddha held out to us, that all mental conditions are conditions. They change, and we can influence the nature of that change through our study and practice of Dhamma. So I'd like to leave the evening talk.